Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Stay Kind conversation. I'm Jane Hutchin. I'm the resident journalist with Stay Kind. And in a few moments, I'm going to be bringing an amazing person to our conversation, Dr. Debra Keenahan, who is a psychologist, an artist, an academic, an author, a parent, and she lives with achondroplasia, dwarfism. So she's going to give us a very unique perspective on disability and kindness. Now, before I bring her to the stage, just a few ground rules. I'd love you to say hello to us on the chat tab that you'll probably see in front of you. And tell me how you're doing. It's been it's been more than a few months that many of us have been in lockdown. I wonder, how are you coping? Do you have any strategies that you can share with us? And do tell me where you're tuning in from tonight. We'd love to hear from you. Now, we're going to be talking for about 30 minutes, and 5 minutes before we're going to wrap up, I'm going to let you know, and I hope that you'll submit some fabulous questions for Debra to answer, and you can use the Q&A tab, which you'll see in front of you. So without further ado, let's bring to the stage Dr. Debra Keenahan. Debra, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me on the show. This is great. And hello to all the listeners.
It's lovely to have you. Debra, I was wondering, we've been, and you and me talk quite frequently. I wonder, it's been lockdown territory for quite a while. I wonder if you can share a tip with us for how you keep your spirits up.
Well, I've been quite fortunate because I've had a great deal to do during lockdown, and a lot of my work is very desk-based, shall we say, with the writing and the teaching that is done now online. But it has had an impact when I've tried to do certain art projects, and that has been difficult. But it's more about, for me, managing by structuring the day.
So yeah, structure is something that really helps me as well. Structure and routine. Like if I didn't go for my daily walk, I think I would go nuts. But thank you very much for that. And hello to you, Belinda. And hi, Alec, my friend from Melbourne. It's lovely to see you. And oh, I think we have somebody who might be related to you, Debra.
Oh,
your brother from Yass, Christopher.
Oh, I was going to say last name can be a bit of a giveaway sometimes.
And David and Marie, lovely to have you all on this call with us tonight. Friends, those of you who don't know Debra might not know that she's about to hand in her second PhD, putting us all to shame. And what I love is that Debra really uses herself in her work. And Debra, you said something to me yesterday that I'm going to share with our group now. You said that it wasn't your dwarfism that disables you. What disables you is people's attitudes to your dwarfism. Can you explain that?
Well, it's that with my condition, you can say, yes, dwarfism to some extent is an impairment. I'll never run the 4-minute mile. And I do require assistance sometimes in shops to reach things and such like. However, I am able to do almost everything, sometimes just a little slower and sometimes with a little bit of assistance. But what I mean by it's people's attitudes that disable me, it's the attitude of you're not equal to me. We don't want people like you here. You're not allowed to do that, or people like you shouldn't be allowed to do that sort of thing. And
really?
Oh yeah, that adds a layer of oppression that doesn't need to be there.
So
And
could you give
that's
me
disabling.
an example of when and how someone would say something like that to you, that you shouldn't be doing this or you shouldn't be here?
Oh, well, I'll give you an example. It can be in certain situations, um, like, for example, socializing. Uh, and when I say they may, sometimes they can actually explicitly say somebody like you shouldn't be here. I've actually been verbally abused in the street, being told somebody like me shouldn't exist.
Goodness.
And that's a very extreme example, but it's more the very subtle, what is referred to in psychology as the microaggressions. When you walk into a room and you get the snickers, or you get the sideways glances, or you get that. It's the non-verbal expression of non-acceptance or ridicule.
Debra, at this point, I'd like to share some images that your husband Robert took a few years ago for a visual essay that you did. And our tech whiz has brought them up. Thank you, Alex. I love these photos. We can slow down a little bit, Alex, because I just think, just try and look at the people around Debra. Look at the expressions. They don't know that Debra's quite aware of what is happening. And there is just this, it's a momentary thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but the interesting thing, if you look at these photos, they were actually all taken within a 15-minute time period.
Wow.
So it's not as if there's a massive amount of time between these behaviours. So it's kind of like it's happening. Sometimes it can be like an onslaught.
And you're always aware of those looks, the gaze.
Yes. 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 You're aware. You try to filter out. Because the thing is, you learn that you have to monitor your environment to assess your level of safety.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't think of it that way.
Yes. Yes. You do. You have to scan. Like, you walk into a new place. Am I safe here? Will I be accepted? Uh, can I literally stand in the place without being physically imposed upon? That's one thing. But yes, it can be that sense of, can I enter this place and be relaxed? Can I be safe?
Debra, when do you choose to intervene or say something as opposed to letting the stare or the smirk or sometimes the nasty words just go by?
Well, you mentioned in the introduction that I am a mother, and I when it comes to my daughter and behaviour either directed towards her or that is directed towards me, and she is present.
And we
Or
should explain that she also has
yes,
achondroplasia, dwarfism.
yes, yes. Uh, let's just say I'm far more willing to come forward in those situations, because it is important to me. Since becoming a parent, I have been very mindful that I am a model to my child, and especially as she has the same physicality that I do, that basically people, I was aware when she was younger that I would have to model reactions because there was a chance that she would have that similar experience. And so, yes, mindful that I would in some ways have to show her how to manage.
Debra, this COVID period has been a time of both kindness and unkindness for many people. I wonder, what has it been like for you? Because I presume you haven't gone outside as much as you normally do. Does that give you a measure of comfort, of safety?
Well, it's quite interesting. I belong to a number of chat rooms pertaining to disability, and that one subject that has come up a number of times of how the situation of COVID, that people are, and quite rightly, distressed at the fact that their social environment has been compressed, that they can't go out, they can't go here, they're being prevented from going all over the place, of having, of socialising with people. And on these chat rooms, it's sometimes said, we actually experience that even without COVID.
Wow.
We're told, our social, what we can do socially is lessened. We're told we can't go here, we can't go there. And that can be simply because we can't access a place.
So, in a way, these times are kind of teaching all of us what it must be like for a lot of people in the disability community.
To some extent, yes. Yes. Yeah. And that is something that has been said on some of these chat rooms. If people want to know how to manage and how to cope, ask us. Yeah, we have the experience.
Debra, Peter Dinklage, the star of Game of Thrones,
Yes.
also has dwarfism.
Yes.
He has said that dwarfism is the last bastion of acceptable prejudice.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Totally. Unfortunately. It shouldn't be, but I think that is an unfortunate, appropriate statement. Because it is, and when what he means by that, he's referring to dwarfism is a disability, a physical difference that it is basically socially acceptable to laugh at. I mean, you go to a comedy store, you go to a comedy room, and you can guarantee there'll be at least one dwarf joke that night. And people will laugh. And and quite understandable, people would say, so what is it you want? Do you want to stop the humour? Do you want to stop people laughing? And I said, no, you're not wanting to for people to not have a sense of humour. But there is a difference between laughing with people and laughing at them.
Absolutely.
Yes. And it's just...
What do you think will end that bastion of acceptable prejudice?
That's a good question. It's interesting. I have this quiet little fantasy of having a comedy night with one rule that all the comedians have to adhere to, and that is the only people that they can be the focus of their jokes are people who belong to their own demographic. So in other words, they can only tell jokes about people like themselves. It'd be interesting to see how that show would pan out. And if there was a competition, I think I know who'd win. But okay, how does that change? It's a cultural change. It's a cultural shift, and it will be gradual. And I'm trusting it will happen. And the more you see people of difference in all avenues of life, which we can be, then that will be a breakthrough, and people will start going, difference is actually the norm. Yeah. Diversity is actually the norm. And it will happen.
Debra, you're such a strong advocate. Was that something that you grew up with? Because I think you were the only short-statured child in your family, weren't you?
Yes. Despite the fact, and the brother who is on can attest to the fact that there were a lot of short jokes in our family. But, I don't think any of us were above average height. But anyway, the answer to that is my father was always very, very, very cognizant of me needing to manage and needing to manage my situation. And I can remember him saying to me on many an occasion, Debra, it would be really good if society came to you, but chances are it won't. So you're going to need to learn how to go out and manage and, cut through. That was he was very practically oriented in that way. And I can remember him saying that to me on many an occasion. Mm.
Were you picked on? Were you bullied at school?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I was. Yeah, I was picked on, unfortunately. Interestingly, that only happened in primary school. It didn't happen in high school. I had a really good high school experience, I have to say. A really good high school experience. But in primary school, yes, I was. And sadly, it wasn't by children my own age or younger. It was actually by older children, older kids. Yeah.
Older kids picking on you.
Yes. Yeah.
You have said that in some parts of the world, it's as if people don't even notice you. And you told me of a story from when you were traveling in Italy. So why did people ignore you, whereas in this country they see you?
Well, can I actually can I say, I don't think ignore isn't the description for it. I wasn't ignored, because you can be ignored and that can be quite a negative experience. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, you're talking, you're saying something. Oh, yeah. So ignored in that sense. No, I wasn't ignored. I was just a face in the crowd. I was just like everybody else. And that is my definition of freedom.
Wow.
And that I experienced in Italy and I experienced in Canada. And my daughter experienced that in Canada as well. Why do I think?
Yep.
I actually don't have a clear answer. Why should that be the case in one area and then in another? Now, having said this, let's put this in context. My experience in Italy was back in 1988.
Do you think things might have changed?
Well, it's quite possible because now Italy has the highest rate of the intervention of bone lengthening
No.
for people with dwarfism. Yes,
Good grief.
the highest rate is in Italy. And that is an intervention that it's quite painful and can have significant complications. But yeah, so my experience is that of acceptance, and yet there's sort of like that almost a contradiction. Why Canada? I do not know.
So I understand that. So there's this difference in how people react to you. Let me ask you, I've seen a piece of work you did in what was called the Empathy Clinic. It was a piece of artwork which involved me donning a virtual reality headset and experiencing what it was like to be you with your daughter, Sarah, in various situations where you were being harassed. And it was an extremely uncomfortable situation. How often does this happen to you?
Oh, don't, you can see from my reaction. More often than
You'd like
than
it
I
to.
like. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gets tiring.
I can imagine.
Like, for example, a friend of mine who has dwarfism just described a fortnight ago how he was walking from a restaurant to his car, only 150 meters. And in that one short distance, he actually got abused on 3 different points, from being yelled at, from a car that drove past, being stopped by a person in the street, attempting to tap him on his head, and yeah, and then again by another person walking, towards him that basically said something. And that's 3 times in 150 meters. So it actually happens much more than people you would think.
What goes through you after an incident like that? What's it like for you?
The heart pounds. It comes in the ears. You have all the autonomic physical responses. And for me, there is always a very quick assessment of what is the best thing for me to do in this situation.
Right.
And that is incredibly quick.
Yeah.
As I said, when you've got the situation of this is something that you've been faced with, and I hope I'm trusting there won't be an assumption on the part of any listener that, oh, if it happens so often, you must get used to it, which is a comment that I have received on more than one occasion from people. You never get used to being abused. But you do learn strategies to manage. Yes, you do. You learn strategies to manage.
Do you think it makes you a more cynical person?
No, I hope not. I
don't find you a cynical person, but I wonder what that would do if you were constantly pointed at, abused, laughed at.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I have my off days. I do. I have my off days, and I have times when, help, it gets tiring. It gets tiring. And all you want to do is just walk down the street in peace. And I'll be honest, I have seen myself in tears, but you won't see me do that in public. No.
Debra, you're just an amazingly strong woman.
Oh, God, I'm a marshmallow inside.
So this is a stay kind conversation. What would you ask people to do? I mean, is kindness a question that you consider frequently? Do you think in your head, I hope somebody is kind?
Well, it's quite interesting, that term kindness. Like, for me, what is actually really most important, more important than anything, is actually respect.
Respect.
And that's what I hope everybody experiences, and I hope that's how I respond to people. I hope that's how people experience me treating them, because that's how I would like to be treated. If anything, with respect.
What do you think would make our society a kinder and more respectful society?
Well, it's understanding, it's accepting diversity, accepting differences, understanding. But in saying that, right, that there is also a need to acknowledge that sometimes there are differences that and behaviours and whatever that, you know, for whatever reason you can't actually come to grips with or accept or whatever. But you can still treat the person with respect, even in disagreement with them. So it's increasing empathy, shall we say, of, you know, how would I want to be treated? You know, and it's putting oneself in another's position. The more we can do that, then, you know, I think that's when there will be, and it is happening. There is definitely improvement, and you know, so I feel positive for the future.
Now, we haven't finished, but this is a good time for me to remind you, those of you on our discussion call, that if you have questions for Debra, please use the Q&A tab, and I will put those questions to Debra anytime from right now. Debra, you spoke a minute ago about things getting better in society. Do you see your job? I mean, I love the way you use your work and you use yourself to tell the story of disability, whether it's a psychological perspective or an artistic perspective. Do you see yourself as an advocate or an activist?
Oh, an advocate. An advocate. And the reason I use myself, it's actually for ethical reasons. It's not because I particularly want to see myself up on the screen or in the frame, or think I can do a better job than anybody. No, it is actually for ethical reasons. I know what I could potentially experience, what I could potentially face, and I'm not willing to ask somebody to put themselves in that position. So it's for ethical reasons in that sense. But if you want me to talk a little bit about my work and how I use my...
Well, I was telling people a moment ago about the visual, the high definition virtual reality show that you did, but you also, for example, collect tweets and social media posts about what people say. And do you think that most people who make those derogatory comments about people with dwarfism, do you think that they do that because they don't think anybody else is listening in? What is that?
Oh no, I think they do think people are listening in. It's an attention thing, and I think for a lot of people, it's something of a defense of I can feel better about myself if I can put somebody else down.
Right. It's to feel better, to feel stronger, to feel bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Debra, we've got a question that's come through. Actually, okay, we've got one on the Q&A tab. I'll just ask this question from Annie. She's working on a mental health project in Queensland, and she's interested in how we can best support the mental health of athletes, not just Olympians, and wondering if you'd have any suggestions for how you could implement measures to ensure respect. And I lost the last bit of that because there was another message coming through. Let me see if I can find the rest of it. Well, respect and kindness, really.
Well, when we're talking about athletes and possibly Olympians, are we talking about them feeling disappointed in their performance or disappointed in themselves, or not coping with the pressure of performance? Well, first of all, you would need to find out which it is, and then you would have to target the how you addressed it according to what the problem is. If it had to do with disappointment in themselves, which is something that it can, relate, that whole thing of having to look at one's dignity and self-esteem. And when the outside world is doing a lot to challenge that self-esteem, then it's a matter of for me, reminding myself of how it's important to me to behave in a manner that I would be pleased of, that I would be, let's put it this way, that I would like to think I would like to be treated that way. I would,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. How best, I mean, this is part of Annie's question as well, you know, how best can we be an ally? I mean, what you seem to be saying there is that you sort of need to be the psychologist first and then to implement strategies to help people.
I think that's really nice idea, being an ally.
Yeah, that is a
I
great
really
term, isn't
like
it?
that idea. That's a
Yeah.
lovely idea, and thank you, Annie, for saying that. I think that's lovely. Uh, I think it's more a case of, if you see something, say something. And sometimes that doesn't mean that a person would necessarily want you to intervene on
Yes.
their behalf, but to simply check out with them if they're all right.
Yeah.
And to just acknowledge that you saw what happened and are they okay, and that, yeah, because it's that connection, of that human connection, that really matters. That's really
Debra,
important.
thank you, Debra. Sarah has asked, what's something nice I can do if I meet someone with dwarfism?
Oh, that's lovely. You know what is the nicest thing you can do? Introduce
What?
yourself and ask them their name. And how are they?
So simple.
So simple. Yeah. Yeah. Because all too often, when you stand out in a crowd, as we do, strangely, you get the feeling that whole thing of wanting to connect and to know the person rather than about the condition. Yeah. But to know the person.
So here's something I know you'll have a firm view on. When you meet someone with dwarfism, should you crouch down next to them?
One thing it is not good to do is to bend over and put, as if you're talking to a child. The best thing to do is ask them, what would you be more comfortable? Would you prefer me to sit down? Would you prefer me to stay? What would you prefer? Yeah, ask them.
That's such a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, ask them. And do you want to know something?
What?
I'd say 9 out of 10 people would appreciate being asked.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and it's always, I'll give you a little bit, give the people a little bit of a hint, and that is, if you're sat down, chances are you're looking at the person straight in their eyes. So to just sit down, even without asking, just sit down, and the person with dwarfism can choose to either sit next to you or stay stood. But chances are you'll be looking at them eye to eye.
Perfect.
And we all like to do that, don't we?
Absolutely. Annie has asked, She says, thank you for sharing your experiences, and she's sorry to hear for what you and your family deal with and still have to deal with. When you speak of respect and kindness, what things come to mind to you specifically in relation to other people's behaviours or responses that would have the most positive impact on your day-to-day experience?
Okay, just for a little clarity of people, their treatment of me, their behaviour towards me.
Or is it like a coffee every day, or, you know?
I actually really appreciate it if, say, I'm in the shops, right, and I'm stood there and I'm looking at the shelves and if somebody says, "Excuse me, I hope you don't mind me asking, do you need any assistance? Do you need me to reach? Would you like me to reach anything for you?"
Perfect.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
I actually really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Does it happen often?
it does actually. It does. It
That's good
does.
to know.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is another very good question from Amanda. They're coming in thick and fast at the moment. What's your advice on responding to a child's curiosity when they notice physical
Yeah,
difference?
Kate, I was just thinking of an absolutely gorgeous story. Can I share this? Okay. Sarah and I, we were up, this was actually on the Central Coast, and